I love this point that you're raising about how, in order to truly unlock a team member's greatest potential and cultivate the highest level of belonging, leaders need to shift their mindsets. Can you give us some specific examples of what shifting a mindset would look like in the context of, for example, I'm thinking about some of the comments that were mentioned on the chat board, wanting to be effective in how we mentor or we coach a team member's performance. So, what would a leader's shift in mindset look like if they're doing it virtually versus doing it in person?
So one thing is, for example, people say, oh, well, I would have just stayed after and given that person feedback in the moment, right? We would have had this conversation, but now it's virtual. Everybody hangs up the Zoom and goes everywhere. I'm like, okay, well, why wouldn't we set up a 15-minute debrief call after every virtual client interaction? And we would have time to do that, right? How do we think about feedback is a good example. We now have, if the person is in the office with us, right, we could give that person feedback in person, but sometimes I think about where would that person feel most psychologically safe? And maybe I want to have an opportunity to give them feedback virtually and connect with them later. Maybe that's the best place for me to engage with this person based upon the kind of feedback that I need to get. Suddenly we have choices, and I think we have to think about how can we leverage those choices for that better talent development, right? One of the mindset shifts also as it relates, I think, to flexibility that we need to have is around the fact that it's not a trade-off for performance. So
Right.
somebody is not engaging, if somebody is not visible, if somebody is not performing, that's not a flexibility issue. That's an HR issue. That's a performance issue. And we need to be thinking about how are we making sure that we're having the right conversation and not our knee-jerk reaction is, oh, well, if they're in front of me, they're going to be working. And that's the way I need to get them back in.
Right. I'm thinking about how, for the shift in mindset, one of the points that I would underscore is whether your team member is working in person with you in the office next door or they're joining you virtually for most of the week, the act of mentoring and coaching still needs to happen. Like, you need to be advocating, you need to be sponsoring, you need to be giving feedback, you need to be guiding. It's about how you're doing it. And I
Yeah.
think for a lot of leaders, we have, like, I'm thinking about my own situation. I'm Gen X. I was groomed by boomers and traditionalists who were used to working physically in the office. That's what they were taught to do. And so they learned how to do that. But what they didn't learn how to do, and this goes back to the point that you were raising, is how do you do this if the person's not physically in the office with you? We still need to mentor, we still need to coach, we still need to give feedback. But then it means that as a leader, I have my toolkit for if the person's in person, and if I have my toolkit for if the person works more hybrid. The point is, I'm still exercising the same leadership skill set because I still have to engage in the same act.
Yeah.
So
I think that's an important point, and I want to echo what you're saying in the sense that absolutely everything that you're saying is right and oftentimes I will say to organizations, don't call them connection days and don't call them collaboration days when you have people in the office. It's like you can't afford to only connect 60% of the time.
right.
You have to be connecting and collaborating and mentoring, to your point, 100% of the time.